We've been in a wilderness journey. We're going on a wilderness journey over the next few weeks, all leading up to Easter. If you missed last week, we kicked it off, the beginning of the wilderness. We looked at the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, right, and how their sin got them sent out into the wilderness. And from that moment, humanity began a journey, a lifelong journey of wandering in a wilderness of sin, of death, of hurt, of pain, and all the things that come with it. And today we're going to continue that. We're going to just continue to go through some of the Old Testament, leading up to the New Testament, ultimately leading to Jesus. Today we're going to look at a different wilderness story, though. This time, the wilderness is not a consequence of sin. No, this time God purposefully sends someone out into the wilderness, and his name is Abraham. And Abraham's wilderness journey it's got a lot. There's a lot of adventure. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of temptation and mishaps and all these things. But in the midst of it, there's some really, really great promises for you and I. And Abraham teaches us a lot about faith and belief. And so we're going to look at a few crucial moments in Abraham's journey. I kind of want to give you a layout of this. We're going to just dive into his first call to go. And then after that, we're going to look at what I'm calling a covenant of multiplication. From there, we go to a command to sacrifice. And then finally, we get to the end where there is this contentment from obedience. So you guys ready to jump into Abraham's wilderness story? Yeah? All right, cool. So let's dive in. We'll be in, right now, we're going to start in Genesis 12. We'll look at verse 1. Here's what it says. This is the calling to go. The Lord said to Abram, and by the way, Abram is Abraham, so you're going to see those names both. And so he said to Abram, go out from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Verse 4. And so Abram went as the Lord had told him. I've always loved Abram's story because what you see is this deep faith that he has. Like Abram, he didn't know where God was sending him. And you got to see that. He doesn't know. God just says go. And he also didn't know what God was going to do. Like we have a promise, right? God is going to bless him. He doesn't know how that's going to play out. And so I just love this faith. And Abram's like, okay. And he went anyway. And he believed God was going to do something great. And so in the wilderness, God says, I will show you my purpose. And I will bless you. But first, Abraham had to take a step of faith. And the reality of it is this, taking a step of faith, taking a step of obedience, that first step into the unknown is going to reveal its purposes from there. But you've got to be willing to take that step. You've got to be willing by faith to go where God is calling. And so now, as his journey continues, we also learn a lot about his character. God begins to reveal things about Abraham. And so Genesis 15, verse 1, and then we're going to look at 5 and 6. It says, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, and your reward will be very great. In verse 5, it says, he took Abram outside and said, look at the sky, count the stars, if you're able to count them. Then he said to him, your offspring will be that numerous. In verse 6, and it goes on and it says this very profound statement. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And what you need to know, if you don't know this already, at this point in the story, Abraham has no children. He's getting on in age. He's very old. He's been told to go. And God's saying, I'm going to give you some offspring. And he's questioning, but how is that going to happen? Like, how am I going to be the father of a great nation who's so numerous and I don't have it? But then verse 6, what does it say? He believes what God tells him. And so we have this willingness to go, right? It's followed by this belief in the impossible. And in that kind of faith, here's what God calls it. He calls that righteousness. It's credited to him as righteousness. But having the faith to go, that's just the beginning of what God was going to do. And he begins to give him these little hints, right? And so we get further into this wilderness journey, and then God then fulfills the covenant. So we get to the second part of his wilderness journey, the covenant to multiply. Genesis 17, verse 1 says, when Abram was 99 years old, told you this dude's old, the Lord appeared to him saying, I will establish my covenant between me and you. I will multiply you greatly. Verse 6, I will make you extremely fruitful and will make nations and kings come from you. Verse 8, and you and your offspring, I will give the land where you are residing, all the land of Canaan, as an eternal possession, and I will be their God. Verse 19 says, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will name him Isaac. I will confirm my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his future offspring. And I just want you to see these words and see these promises. And I tried to highlight them on there for you, right? You see these words like everlasting covenant and eternal possession. And you see this repeated, like God is saying to Abraham, like, I'm making a covenant with you, but this covenant isn't just for you. And so what we'll see is that the covenant was not only a promise for Abraham and Sarah to have a son. No, it's more than that. It was also a promise that from Abraham, an entire nation would come out. And from that nation, God would then bring about his plan of salvation. And so what we get to see as we track along the story, like through Isaac's lineage, Jesus would come one day into the world to save all of humanity from sin and death, right? From the beginning where Adam and Eve sinned, Jesus would then come and save us from that. And so this is really powerful because the nation of Israel is born from a man who had deep enough faith to follow God into the unknown. And as we're going to see in a moment, he had obedience enough to sacrifice to God that which he loved most. And this sacrifice that we're going to see, and you might know this already, it would become the backdrop, really a foreshadowing of an even greater sacrifice to come through Jesus. And so what we have is we have this call to go, we have a covenant of multiplication, and then in the midst of those things comes the command to sacrifice. Genesis 22, verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, here I am, he answered. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. Verse 3, so Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. Now, you can see some similarities, right, from the original call to go to a place I will show you. Abraham went, and now God's telling him to go and do something else that is going to require a big sacrifice. And what does Abraham do? He gets up and he goes. And you look at the scope of Abraham's life, and you begin to see some things. Like God sent Abraham to an unknown location in the wilderness. And then God made an impossible covenant, impossible to Abraham, an impossible covenant with Abraham in the wilderness. And then God asked Abraham to sacrifice greatly in the wilderness. Do you see the pattern? Here's what's happening. The pattern of Abraham's wilderness, it has unknown, impossibilities, and great sacrifice. And I just, for you and I wonder, have you ever felt like God purposefully sent you into an unknown, my buddy, he's good. Have you ever felt like God has purposefully sent you into an unknown, impossible, or sacrificial wilderness season? Because that's what we see taking place. And I feel like I felt that in my life as well. And so it's like he sends you, and you don't fully know where he's sending you, and you don't fully understand what he's asking of you. And for Abraham, there are so many details that are missing in both of these things. Abraham, go. Okay, where? No, just go. Abraham, go sacrifice your son, go to this land, and I'm gonna reveal to you what's going to happen. And so in the midst of this, I'm sure Abraham is pondering, like, where is God leading me? How will God fulfill his promise that he made to me? And then why would God, in the midst of my obedience and following him, why would God ask me to sacrifice my son? Each call, each test, each command, it requires deep belief in the character and goodness of God. Even when we are left pondering the where, the why, the how, the when, all of it, there's this deep belief in God's character. You think about this for Abraham, from the beginning to the middle to this moment of sacrifice, and I'm just going, he was probably just felt so bewildered often by what God was calling him to. But then you go, it's in his own bewilderment that led to this deep belief in a God who is unchanging. And he believed this, that God is loving, that he is just, that he is kind, that he is merciful, that he's compassionate, that God keeps his promises. And Abraham knew that, but he was bewildered by it. I've been listening to this book called The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It was one of the books on the Make Yourself Resilient Challenge. And so myself and a few other guys are going through it. And as I was listening this week, there was so much truth that was dropped that connected directly to what I wanted to share. So I wanted to share this with you. And it'll be on the screen. It said this: discipleship is not limited to what you can comprehend. It must transcend all comprehension. Plunge into the deep waters beyond your own comprehension, and I will help you comprehend even as I do. Bewilderment is the true comprehension. Not to know where you are going is the true knowledge. My comprehension transcends yours. And it's one of those things where you go, this is too much for me to comprehend and understand, so I'm going to relinquish that to you because I know that, God, you know all things, are in all things, and see all things. So I'm going to believe in that. And as you begin to think about this, it's like, if we were able to fully comprehend all God's ways, all God's plans, all that God asked us to do, it would require little faith of us to do those things. And we just be like, okay, I got all the details. I know everything that's going on. I can probably handle this in my own power and my own reliance, my own wisdom, because I fully understand, so I don't need you, God. But God calls us into things that we do not comprehend so that we can fully understand who God is and what God is doing. Following God can feel bewildering, and rightly so. Like, how could we ever fully understand the ways of God or the plans of God or the will of God? And why would we even think that we could get to a place where we would? He is so much greater than us. He is sovereign. He is all powerful. He is all seeing. He's everywhere at once. And we're going, God, help me comprehend the way that you comprehend. And God's like, my ways are not your ways. And you're not going to get there. And so what that means is you got to trust me because I have full comprehension. It almost seems as if God often calls us into situations we cannot fully comprehend so that our bewilderment can lead us into a deeper faith, right? Into a deeper trust in believing him. Because in our bewilderment, what happens? In our bewilderment, if we're willing to follow, if we're willing to obey, we surrender control and we find faithful submission, not to what God is calling us to do or asking of us, but faithful submission to who God is. And that's the kind of faith and belief that God calls us to. Abraham, being sent out into the wilderness, there's this test, right? What is God testing? He's testing his belief. Will he fully trust the will of God and the ways of God, even when it's beyond his comprehension? So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about what we tend to trust, and I was thinking about this wilderness journey, and some of you are probably like, why is this dude wearing a backpack, right? You've just been thinking about that whole time. You haven't heard a single thing I said. You're like, when's that backpack coming out? There's something cool in there, right? And so we're talking about this wilderness. And if we're gonna go on a wilderness journey, we're probably not gonna go out empty-handed and be like hoping for the best, right? We're gonna take some things with us, and as we take things with us, what are we gonna do? We're gonna trust that the things we brought are gonna do what those things are meant to do. And so I have my backpack. And first things first, what am I trusting my backpack to do? Hold my stuff, okay? If my backpack doesn't hold my stuff, it's crap. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna trust it. And I have full belief that when I put this backpack on and I put my stuff in it, that I'm not gonna be like, backpack, you good? You still holding my stuff? You got me? Like, is anything falling? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna trust the backpack. And so within my backpack, I got a lot of different items. I tried to connect some of them to what you're gonna see in a minute, but there are some other random things as well. So the first thing I'll say, we'll go in here. I'm gonna go on a trip. I'm probably gonna stay a while. I wanna bring a sleeping bag, yeah? And guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna trust my sleeping bag to keep me warm and give me a little bit of comfort. You know, it just depends on what kind of sleeping bag you buy, but you're hoping it'll keep you warm, keep you comfortable. And so we got that. The other thing I'm probably gonna, I wanna be able to just really handle the wilderness and things that go on. So I'm gonna bring a knife, okay? And here's my knife, and I can use my knife for different things. I can use it to prepare things, cut things, stab stuff, okay? That's what I'm thinking in my head, stabbing stuff. I just want to, anyone else? I'm just gonna go out in the wilderness and stab stuff. All the guys are like, yeah, man. Let's go stab stuff. And so, got my knife. My knife's gonna help me do that. And something else, like we're gonna go, we wanna be able to do fire. And so like I got a flint, and so I can use my knife to also start a fire. And so I'm gonna trust. This is gonna help me start the fire. This is gonna help me stab stuff. No, and do other things. But I'm gonna trust the knife to do what the knife was made to do, okay? So I got my knife, I got my flint, I got my fire. Let's see. I'm gonna bring a flashlight. Okay, yeah, that's bright, right? Yeah, like, oh, watch out. So I'm trusting that my flashlight, that one blinks, is gonna help me see, right? Trusting that, okay, so I'm gonna trust that. What else is in here? Oh, just in case, we're gonna need a hatchet, because you never know, right? And I'm gonna trust that if I need to cut something up or decimate something, this is gonna do the job, okay? So I got my hatchet. And I'm just want to dual wield, hatchet, knife. It's going to be great. What else we got? I'm going to bring some rope just in case. There will probably be many different needs that I'll need for this. Hang my stuff, hold my stuff, tie something up, whatever. I'm going to trust the rope to do what the rope is meant to do. And then in case I need more protection, if the knife's not going to do it, then we get a machete. And this is really gonna, men are like, yeah. When are we going on this trip, Pastor Brent? I'm gonna go grab all the same stuff and we're gonna go have some fun. And so, the machete, you're gonna trust that the machete will do whatever you want the machete to do. If you need to clear some stuff, if you need to, there's like you could saw some stuff. And so we have all these items and we're trusting in what they were meant to do, what they were purposed for. My question to you today becomes, do we trust God as much as we trust our gear to survive? Do you place that much trust in who God is, right? That's the reality. Do we trust God? Because if our life is a wilderness journey, right, and we're gonna spend our life there, and God has provided all that we need, all the gear we need to survive, do we trust Him? Do we trust His word? Do we trust His calling? Do we trust His promises? Do we trust His Son? Do we trust His Spirit? Do we really trust God? Will we put the same amount of faith in God as we would in these things? And it's crazy to me. Why does it often seem harder to trust the Creator of all things than it is to trust created things? I mean, really think about that. Where do you think all this came from? Man. And who created him? God. And somehow we go, I'm gonna trust my money. I'm gonna trust my possessions. I'm gonna trust my title. I'm gonna trust in myself. But if God asks me or calls me or tells me to do something, I'm gonna go, hold up. God, you know what you're doing? And we do this to God time and time again. We're not willing to trust Him. And the reality of it is we will trust in things that will break, that are perishable, that will be worn down, and that will reach an end of life. Let me tell you something about God. He never breaks, he is never worn out, and he will never reach an end of life. He is eternal, right? And I'm going to trust in someone who has been and always will be. And what's great about God is while he has eternal life, he then offers eternal life to those who are willing to faithfully trust in him and also follow him. And so I'm looking at this command to sacrifice and really beginning to examine the depth of Abraham's faith in God. And we saw some of the things that Abraham brought. Abraham brought wood, right, to burn the sacrifice. Abraham brought a knife to kill the sacrifice. And you know what the third thing he brought with him was? His son, to be the sacrifice. And there's trust in all of these things. And there's this moment where they're heading there, and Isaac begins to put 1 and 2 together, right? Abraham's got the plan. Isaac doesn't. We got the knife. We got the wood. Dad, there's something missing. So we get into Genesis 22. Isaac said, verse 7, the fire and the wood are here. Where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham answered, ready? God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them walked on together. Isn't it powerful how he answers Isaac? What's he say? God will provide. He doesn't say God will provide the sacrifice or a sacrifice. He's very clear. God will provide the lamb, knowing full well that he's speaking to the sacrifice that God told him to sacrifice. And in this moment, right after this, you know what God does? He provides, not a lamb, he provides a ram to take Isaac's place. So God did provide, but then we go centuries later, guess what? God provided the perfect sacrificial lamb. His name is Jesus. And you begin to go, the covenant promise that God made with Abraham goes all the way to Jesus. And so look at this. Abraham trusted the fire to do what the fire was going to do. Abraham trusted the knife to do what the knife was meant to do. But more than that, he trusted in a God to provide the sacrifice. He trusted in a God who would come through. And there's something so powerful about his faith and his belief in God, even when it is unknown to him. Later in Hebrews, it speaks to Abraham's faith. It says this in Hebrews 11:8, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, he obeyed and he went out to a place he was going to receive as an inheritance. He went out not knowing where he was going. Verse 17 says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. He received the promise, which was Isaac, and he that was offering his unique son to God. In verse 19, it says, Abraham considered God to be able even to raise someone from the dead. And as an illustration, he received him back. This is the type of faith that Abraham had. He believed God would raise Isaac from the dead. You want to know why? Because of what God already promised. What God calls you to, what he asks you to step into, will never contradict what he has promised to you. It'll never contradict his word. And I believe that Abraham stepped into what God asked him to do because he goes, God told me this, and I know God's not going to go back on his word. So I'm going to do what he's calling me to, even though I don't have full comprehension. And so Abraham teaches us an important lesson. In the wilderness, do not let circumstances, whether it's waiting or sacrifices or loss or sin, do not let circumstances cause you to lose sight of God's promises and his goodness. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter the wilderness season that you're in, it doesn't change who God is. And it doesn't change his goodness, and it doesn't change his character, and it doesn't change his promises. You know, Abraham's command to sacrifice is this test, and I believe God is saying to Abraham, like you've followed and you've done so obediently, and I've considered you to be righteous, but in this moment, God asked Abraham, who does Isaac ultimately belong to? And it's such a powerful question. Who does Isaac belong to? Do you think Isaac belongs to you? Or does Isaac ultimately belong to me? And Abraham's actions show without a doubt that Isaac belongs to God. His child, his only son, his promised son, is God's son first and foremost. And due to his faith and his obedience, he shows that he believes that God will protect, provide for, and care for Isaac even when it's hard to comprehend God's plan for him. We get into Genesis 22, this moment of the sacrifice, and it's all there. Isaac's there on the altar. Abraham's ready to strike, and here's what happens. Verse 11, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, here I am. And then he said, do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son from me. Verse 16, this is the Lord's declaration, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your only son, I will indeed bless you and make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky and the sand on the seashore. We go back to the promise that he made in the beginning, and we see it come to fulfillment. And I want to show you something. Abraham was blessed because of his obedience, not because God needed his sacrifice. You understand? Because he ended up not sacrificing. What God needed was his obedience, even when he didn't fully comprehend. And that's when the blessing came. And that's when he begins to have this covenant come to fruition. And this brings us to this final part of Abraham's wilderness journey. Shortly after this, contentment comes after obedience. Genesis 22, verse 18, it goes on. All the nations of the earth will be blessed by your offspring because you have obeyed my command. Abraham went back to his young men, and they got up and they went together to Beersheba. And I want you to see it. Abraham settled there. He settled. We fast forward just a little bit longer. Genesis 25, verse 7. This is the length of Abraham's life, 175 years. He took his last breath, and he died at a ripe old age. And I love this little added thing. Old and contented. Old and contented. Old and fulfilled. And he was gathered to his people. And you go all the way back. This is a long journey. 175 years, right? This is this journey that's taking place. And we go back to this initial call. God says, go where I will show you and I will bless you. And in that time, Abraham moved from place to place to place to place, wandering through the wilderness, over 100 years of this happening. And finally, he settles at a ripe old age because he was able to rest on the fulfilled promises of God. Everything that he believed, everything that God told him came to fruition. But Abraham didn't settle until after his obedience. And I think we need to see this. I think we need to understand this. It's after the obedience that we will find that we will be settled. And it may require a sacrifice. It may require us to go in a direction that we are not aware of. See, the wilderness that God sent Abraham into teaches us this, that God's promises come through faith, and that God's peace comes after obedience. His promises is through faith, his peace after obedience. And let me just tell you, you will never feel settled if you aren't willing to go in faith and live in obedience. And so I'll end with this. In the wilderness, God will always ask two questions. Will you follow? Will you surrender? Are you willing to go where I'm going to tell you or show you? Are you willing to sacrifice the things that you might hold dear? Do you trust God enough to provide for you, to guide you, to keep his promises in the wilderness? Do you have faith enough to go to an unknown destination? Do you trust enough to sacrifice that which you hold most dear? That which you cherish, that which you prayed for, hoped for, dreamed about? Would you be willing to sacrifice the very thing God promised to give you? I mean, that's what Abraham did. God calls us to trust him in the wilderness, even when we can't see the outcome. And at the end of the day, where God calls us to go and how he asks us to sacrifice, like I've already told you this, it'll never contradict his word or his promises. However, in order to solidify your faith, like what you believe about God's character, he may call you into the unknown in order to test your obedience to follow. And maybe that's what's happening right now in your life. The question becomes, where are you unwilling to go? What have you been unwilling to sacrifice? Listen, all that we have, all that we are, all that we accomplish, all that we will accomplish, you know what? That belongs to him. It all came from him, and it all belongs to him. And I go, God has every right to ask me to go in a different direction or in an unknown direction. God has every right to ask me to sacrifice something that he gave to me in the first place. When our faith is tested, when our obedience is in question, I wonder, will we relinquish control? Will we surrender to the perfect will of God? Or will we continue to wander aimlessly in this world in pursuit of our own comfort, our own desires, or the path that we want to choose? If you feel unsettled in your faith today, or you feel unsettled in your purpose, or you feel unsettled in a relationship, it may be due to your unwillingness to faithfully step into the unknown and obediently sacrifice your comforts, your possessions, your plans, your pride, or even just your own need to prove yourself. Do you trust him enough to go? Church, I'm going to ask that you would bow your heads, close your eyes, we'll pray out, and really just entering into a time of hearing from God and speaking to God. And I'll ask the questions. Where is God calling you to faithfully go? Are you listening? Are you willing to follow? Are you willing to head that direction? If not, why not? What's holding you back? What's keeping you from stepping out? That's that first step to go when we don't know where he's leading. That'll lead us into his promises. That'll lead us into his purposes. But you've got to be willing to step out in faith. Maybe you're willing to step out. Maybe you have stepped out. Maybe you said, God, I have followed and I've done these things. But maybe today in your wilderness journey, God is saying now you need to obediently sacrifice something. What has he asked you to let go of? What has he asked you to get rid of? What has he said, I know that I gave that to you, but I need you to relinquish that over? What's he calling you to sacrifice today? Maybe you find yourself and you haven't taken that first step. There's unwillingness to sacrifice, to be obedient in that. My prayer right now is that God would reveal to you very clearly the very thing that is keeping you from trusting him, following him in faith, and believing enough to be obedient to him. And as he reveals it, don't give excuses. Don't say, but God. Don't try to backtrack. Name it and hand it over. Because if you keep holding on to whatever it is that you're holding on to, it is going to keep you from something great that God has for you. And you don't even know, you can't even imagine what that might look like or be, because his ways are greater. We can't comprehend what God is going to do when we take a step of faith. God, I pray right now for the person in this room who's been saying no to you. Maybe not outright, but you have called them to go. You have maybe even given them hints on where to go, and still there is unwillingness. God, I pray for a repentant heart today in that disobedience. I pray that you would break whatever bond is holding them back from following you. God, we tend to fall in love and cherish the possessions and material things of this world, the very things that you've given us. We often find ourselves worshiping them over you and blindly and obediently trusting them over you. And if that's the truth for someone here today, will you show them what they've replaced you with or who they've replaced you with? It could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be a child, it could be money. Whatever it is, reveal it. And then ask him to sacrifice it. God, give us a willingness, a deep desire to follow you. Remind us of your goodness, of your grace, of your mercy, of your love, of your compassion, that even in our sin, you chose to love us and to save us and redeem us through your Son. And we can never repay you. You just ask us to follow, to obey. Lastly, in this moment, I lift up the person who maybe stepped out in faith, obediently surrendered or sacrificed, and in the midst of it, they were hurt deeply, experienced pain and trauma caused by sin, the actions of others, and now they've taken a step back. Maybe they're dealing with the fallout of whatever took place. God, just in this moment, for that person that is feeling that, would you remind them that you are still with them and that you never left them and that your purpose and your plan still remains the same? God doesn't change because of your circumstance. He loves you all the same. He cares for you all the same. He sees you all the same. You're not alone. If you lost hope, man, I pray that the Spirit would give it back. If you lost joy, I pray that the Spirit would let it be overflowing in your life. Be reminded today of the Father's love for you. And then walk out in it, willing to go wherever he leads. God, thank you for Abraham's story. Thank you for the things that it reveals to us, this faith, this deep faith that believes in who you are, your character, your goodness, your promises. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.